Travel Growth Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Travel Growth Podcast. I'm Tom McLaughlin, founder of SEO Travel, and this is where I speak to successful travel business leaders and dig into the successes, challenges, and learnings from their experiences over the years, so you, the listener, can take away actionable advice to enhance your own businesses and maybe even lives too. My guest today is Nick Kershaw. Nick is the founder of Impact Marathon, an organisation that uses the power of running to uplift communities and empowers runners all over the world. Since 2015, they have raised $1.2 million for grassroots organisations where they tackle the global goals in these communities. And they've organised races in 5 different countries and built a community of more than 400 runners. This is a fantastic conversation to close out the first season of the podcast. Nick is supremely educated in both running an organisation and combining that with making a wider impact, as the name of his company would suggest. We discussed the thinking behind making a true impact, Nick's clear desire to keep improving himself, and how travel business should be approaching their work in a world that is becoming more and more demanding of social and environmental awareness and action. We also cover community, the importance of empowering others, growing their team in a distributed way around the world, and how Nick turns up in new countries with sometimes no connections and goes about building an event from there. Marketing is also included, of course, with Nick's thoughts on cultivating word of mouth and some discussion around influencers, partnerships, and what is at the centre of good marketing. Nick was actually the first person I interviewed in the process of starting the podcast, and as soon as we recorded this one, I knew it would be a worthy contender to bring the first season to a close. This one is packed with highlights. I'm sure you're going to love it. So please enjoy me talking to Nick Kershaw. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the show.
Tom, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you. I've got many questions from all the research that I've been doing, digging around and looking at other things where you've been featured and spoken about stuff, and from our previous conversations as well. And there's so much interesting stuff in there that, I think there's lots to cover and lots of stuff that hopefully people will be able to learn from and take away to implement themselves. So looking forward to getting into it.
Excellent. Yeah, no, definitely good to be here.
Good. So I'd like to start with something which I think you said to me when we spoke originally, which was that you don't think of impact as a travel business. So I thought maybe we could dig into that one first as a bit of a left field starting point and get your thoughts on why you feel like that. And if it's not a travel business, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with why we began Impact. And weirdly, I don't even really think of us as a running business either, even though that's primarily what we do. The whole focus point was, back when the idea was kind of sprouting back in 2015, I really wanted to find ways to connect people with their ability to make an impact in the world. I really wanted to find ways to connect people to great charities and organizations. And lots of people want to give, lots of people want to do good, but they don't know where to start, or they don't know how to do it effectively, or they can't be bothered. There's other things to do. And what we wanted to do was just take people outside of that immediate kind of world and give an opportunity to connect. So when I started it, the whole thing was, how do we get people to understand the difference we're making with these projects in Uganda? That was it. It wasn't the case that, oh, cool, I want to start doing tours of Uganda. I want to start, guerrilla treks and all those things. Those are great. And they kind of, when you go to Uganda, you really should go and see the gorillas. It's awesome. But that wasn't the reason we wanted to do Impact in the first place. It was to connect people with their ability to make an impact in the world, to create positive change, to touch the lives of others. It just so happened that at that time, that was the perfect way to say it. And rather than just say, cool, let's go to Uganda and visit, I said, let's run a marathon. And suddenly you have 70 people signing up, and it's a totally different kind of game. So it was just very much by chance. I even now, the travel part isn't the bit that gets me excited. It's about, cool, this is a really awesome organization, or this is a cool part of the trail route, right? Just like you would in a normal running experience. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. And where did that come from? That desire to show people what they could do and, you know, inspire them that way?
I mean, it's a difficult question because, like, it's always been just something that gets me motivated, right? And it's that's pretty much it. Ever since I was younger, I was always looking at different ways to connect people with their ability to do more and to achieve more. You know, at uni, I started organizing Kilimanjaro trips as well. And it was like, so for me, I can't think of a single thing apart from it gets me really excited when I see that. It gets me really excited when the penny drops and someone's like, I can do that. And to this day, it gets me really excited when I see the changes people make in their lives after an impact marathon, or the friendships that are formed after an impact marathon. And just that idea that we as individuals, we drop a pebble, and that has a ripple effect that genuinely, especially in our lifetimes, in our generations, you drop a pebble, it can create waves all over the world. And so that ripple thing just excites me and inspires me. And I don't think there's any kind of like theory or principle or moment that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. I always kept on finding myself in that situation where, yeah, cool, how can we do this, right? A friend wants to put on a music festival. Okay, cool, how can I help that friend do that? Because it's a really cool idea. What can I do? Okay, cool, I know all the bands in the area. Great, I'll put that together. Right, so it just, everything was very organic, really.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned the Kilimanjaro trip there. So that was back at uni. So even when you were back at uni, you were organising things and involved in that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit more about the journey from there and like how. I guess what got you interested in that kind of thing in the first place, and how did that then lead to, I guess, building up towards impact? I know there's a lot of steps along the way, so maybe
there's a lot of steps. Well, I think the main thing is that basically I've always enjoyed solving things, and so I've always been enjoyed the person, you know, with 3 phones in the background trying to fix things and do that. And so even now when I go to, there's an amazing trail running festival down in the Gower called Love Trails Festival, and that, you know, I'm straight away just messaging me like, look, I want to help. I don't like going to concerts. I don't like going to festivals, but I like having ability to help and put that together. So, I did those Kilimanjaro trips. That was just, again, by, I don't know, it's not by design. A friend was organizing them. He said, Nick, do you want to set up one in Newcastle? And I was like, okay, cool. And then suddenly 60 people were coming over to Kili, and I was 20 and didn't have a clue how on earth that was happening and what I need to do. But you just naturally start to, well, you've got to step up, right? We need to get a bus now. Let's go do that. We need to, you know, everyone's asking me what they want for dinner. Okay, cool. Well, I'll do a bit of research. Great. Excellent. Can we get a table for 60 at an Indian restaurant in Arusha? Yes. Cool. Can we get a bus? Yeah. And it was just really super fun to enjoyable to do that. And that enjoyment of making those connections that make things possible is still, you know, really there to this day. So when I came out of uni, I kind of thought, yeah, I did want to go into organizing travel, but then honestly, I didn't think the money was very interesting at the time because I was 21 and wanted to, you know, do whatever. So I went into finance in London, did that for 5 years. And over the period of time in those 5 years, I moved from, started off in some weird places, and then I ended up getting qualified, wealth management qualified, ended up sort of focusing more and more in impact investing. So where you're investing not only for returns, because that's super important, but also to create a positive social impact. Through there, I started to meet more social entrepreneurs, started to understand that we can manipulate finance for good as well, and that business has an ability to do good. And I think that's where it kind of, yeah, I was just spending a lot of time surrounded by those people. And so when I made that joke about doing a marathon in Uganda, it all kind of picked up speed, and within 6 weeks we launched it. And so that's the very quick version of the 5 years that led up to that moment. And so even to this day, I love it.
So you were you were working in the city. You were working at, in finance. Of it, I guess money being pretty good in that kind of area, and obviously the aspiration of where it could go being even better. So you then went to set up Uganda. What whilst you were still working there, was it kind of side by side?
Yeah, we had no idea when we were setting that up what it was that we were setting up. Really, we just thought this looks like a fun idea, and we think we can do it, and we think we can pull it off. So I stayed in my job throughout the year. The person I set it up with, Henry, he took some time off, ended up leaving his job, went all in on putting that race together, and he was out in Uganda long before I arrived, going through some of the gnarlier stuff that happens when you first are trying to set up something and you don't quite know how to do it. And very much, and then in the build up to that, it started to become clear that there was a model here. There was something interesting. We were able to make it sort of sustainable, not profitable, but sustainable. Okay, cool. That's great. And it was at a time when, I just felt really comfortable with the idea that this was worst case scenario. I was going to get a year and a half. If I go in on this, the model works enough that I'm going to get a year and a half to learn how to set up businesses and learn how to work with organizations and travel and do the things that I hadn't been able to do for 5 years whilst focusing so much on work and that kind of busy job. So I'm just trying to think back to all the things that happened that year. 2015 was absolutely insane and intense year in that respect, because there was loads of things going on. There was some stuff in my personal life which again was just inspiring me to say, okay, cool, if that's happening, then I want to be ahead of it now. I want to be living a really, really full, exciting and thrilling life, right? And so the Impact Marathon idea just came out of lots of long conversations over a bottle of wine, trying to work out what how that model works. I didn't know anything about travel. I understood a bit about starting a business, but not really. And so I was working and spending loads of time with a chap called Matt Fenton, who went on to sort of co-found Impact with me, and he worked at TUI. He'd been at Real Gap originally, then moved to TUI, and now has his own thing with Inspired Ventures. And we just spent loads of time, and he was basically teaching me what was going on in travel and how to set that up. So that's how I kind of fell into being in a travel organization. And we modeled out how Impact Marathon could work, how it could grow, what kind of was it possible? And by the time that we'd done all that, it was like, well, obviously I've got to do this. I've got to go try this out. And, sat down with my chairman, and he was just super, super supportive. So the next steps were actually made a lot easier.
There's a nice story of when you made the cut, basically your boss, or you were at an interview or something where they essentially told you to go and do it.
Well, there was the two moments on that. There was the one was before that job. I was actually interviewing for Goldman Sachs, and the managing director there was, he clearly, bluntly, I don't think he thought I was going to be very good at the job. And I think he also thought I was distracted one there. So, I think it was a really easy thing for him to say, but he basically said, look, we're going to take our pound of flesh, and it's not your passion. You need to go and focus on something that you're passionate about. You could do the job, but you got to really love it. And you love that focus of Africa more. But in that, I'd also talked about, because I just got into running, I also talked about marathons. And I was like, I really want to sign up to a marathon. I'm thinking about doing one. And he just said, do one abroad. It'll change your life, and just make it happen. So I went out of that interview, and I was pretty annoyed because I really wanted that job. And and I was like, well, it's great that he's given me that lovely talk about following my passions, but I don't know how to do that. I ended up with a different organization then called Truestone, which then got bought by someone called John Spears, who's a huge philanthropist here in the UK. And he changed it into this really awesome organization where it's 50% owned by the staff, 50% owned by the foundation. So this was set up really well, and he was really encouraging of all the different things. And I was obviously, even at that stage, had a lot of ideas, and he was always really encouraging of that. So three years on from that interview at Goldman's, I then sat down with him a month after the Uganda marathon and said, look, he started saying, cool, how are we going to do your targets for this next quarter? And I was like, I don't think we should, and this is why I want to do this. And I'm a bit terrified, but I think it's a really good model and decision, and I really want to do this. And next thing you know, he was just really, really encouraging of it, and he said, we will, go and do it. And do you have an office space? No, cool. Well, I've seen that you use room 2 a lot to plan out your other stuff. We know what you're doing in room 2, Nick. So you can have room 2 as your first office space, and I was able to use that. And said, look, you've got 3 months notice, see it out, but be in the office, but get cracking on this because you need all the time you can get. And to this day, he's been super, super supportive. So
nice.
Yeah,
so that
really,
was
really
that
good.
was still a fight while you were in a finance job. Is that again? I've heard you mention, like, was that the B Corp?
Yes, yeah, that's the B Corp at EQ Investors. Yeah. So they were just amazing, and today they're super supportive still.
It sounds like I guess the seeds of like social enterprise and things then were happening in the background whilst you were doing other things.
Yeah.
Some of the pieces aligning maybe that were
very much so. And I think one of the things that happened, I studied politics at uni, and I always thought that I wanted to go into politics because I always it just felt like that's exactly what I wanted to do, because you can make an impact, you can serve, you can do all these things. And then the more I studied politics, the more I realized that sometimes it can be a bit of a zero-sum game, as we're seeing play out a lot. And actually you start to realize, if it's purely about like the level of impact you want, then business has an incredible role to play in that. It's not to say that politics is totally off the agenda, for sure, but it does mean that when I came out of uni, I was like, actually, I don't know whether that's going to be the place where I can have the biggest impact at the moment. So that was like a good journey. And then, so from that, so it's always been in me to use whatever it is that I have as the skill set to create change and to create an impact and to drive for the world that we dreamt we lived in as kids. But yeah, I didn't know it would go down the finance route. I certainly didn't think it would be in the travel and event management route, for sure. That was not in my plans, aged 18, going to uni and studying politics.
Nice. And so just to then sort of join the dots a little bit between, so you were setting Uganda up with Henry, and then you ran that event, and then from there, did that turn into impact directly? Was it?
No, I mean, there was a difficult few months afterwards as Henry and I tried to work out what we both wanted in our lives. We've been like tight brothers pretty much since we were 13, 14. But it was pretty clear over the months afterwards that we both just wanted different things in terms of our own lifestyles and what we wanted. It's a fun project in Uganda, but if you don't love running and you don't really want to build a running organization, then why would you want to do that in lots of different countries around the world? And setting it up the way that Henry had to set it up from pretty much scratch, landing in country, he did all of that kind of groundwork. The idea of then, okay, cool, let's go to Nepal and go through all of that again, wasn't really on his agenda. Whereas for me, I was looking at it from the perspective of, okay, cool, what can we take from this that then becomes replicable around the world quickly and easily? And the answer is it's taken another 5 years to keep working that out. But at the time, I thought I had a good idea on that. And so, we took it. It's always difficult, right? When you're in business with someone that's so important to you. We had definitely some really difficult conversations. Some conversations we probably didn't have that we should have had. And so by sort of 3 or 4 months later, it was clear that Impact would be totally separate from Uganda. And then, I kind of, so by the time it was September 1st, which is when my notice period at work worked out, I was basically walking out into this. I had Matt Fenton supporting me, and that was pretty much it. And 10 days later, flew to Nepal and started to try to make it happen.
Nice. So you and Matt co-founded it together. I've somewhere along the way I heard or read about Inspired 50.
Yes.
Was that part of the look? Did that happen before? Where did that fit into the picture?
that was part of that crazy 2015 year. So that was something that Matt and his business partner Afsal have been working on with their Inspired thing, was to try and get the 50 most inspiring people together. 50 most inspiring people in London, and we had the Lord Mayor's office and all of that side of things. And so that was a fun little campaign, and it opened up like I know that we talked before about Dave Cornthwaite. You know, that was a friendship that I'd seen him speak a couple of times, thought Dave was incredible, talked to him about Inspired 50, and suddenly he just became a really important person in my life at that time and really encouraging of these next steps. In fact, he came over to my house and cleared out my life until it fitted into 2 bags, and I lived out of 2 bags for the next 3-4 years or so.
Nice.
So
I can imagine him being very good at that.
Yeah, brutal. It's like, but that is my prized possession from when I was in youth. Cut.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, it was a painful 3-4 hours that he just went through, and he was like, because I would go so into my running and my cycling, I had so much lycra. I had a whole drawer of lycra, and he was just like, Nick, how much lycra does a man need? A lot, in fairness.
Yeah, absolutely. Depends on the man. So then you set things up with Matt then, and then it was kind of full on. I get, and then I guess when you started, what were the next steps then when you started to get Impact off the ground? Was it lots of new marathons? Was Uganda a part of it, or was it get out to, I don't know, was Nepal the first one?
Nepal was the first one, yeah. So it was basically because we decided on the divorce, and Uganda Marathon was the baby, and Henry got custody there. I was doing basically, okay, cool, I've got a blank slate. And it had actually, back in April, it had been Henry's idea to do the first Impact Marathon should be in Nepal. So I was like, cool, I'm just going to keep following off that vision. So 10 days into going full time, I landed in Nepal. I was there for 3-4 weeks. Then I went off to Guatemala, Colombia, and then, we launched those 3 races straight away. Yeah, I think we launched with 3 races. I think, we launched Nepal, and then 2 or 3 months later, we launched Colombia. And then a few months later, we launched Guatemala. It kind of just snowballed. I wanted to get to a lot of races fast. I realized along the way that wasn't particularly a smart move. And we should really focus on getting 1 or 2 really, really strong. And
why was that then? Why wasn't it a smart move?
Because that first year one in Nepal, we had 90 people register, which is exactly like the top end of what I ever want to have on a trip. And so when in year 2 you then have that spread across, your marketing needs to keep up. You need to be able to fill each race to make them sustainable. What then happened was we had 4 races, so people were repeating and people were coming in, but it was like 30 on this race, 20 on that race, 50 on that. And then so each race, some races are are being sustainable, some races are losing money, and you don't have that. So we needed to spend a bit more time going, cool, unless we had a really big marketing budget, which we didn't because it was shoestringed. Bootstrapped, sorry, shoestring, bootstrapped, yes. So we bootstrapped it that first year, so we didn't really have any marketing budget at all. So from that perspective, you're going out there, you're trying to make noise, but that does cost money. That you do have to structure that really, really well, as pretty well. Indeed, I imagine. Yeah. And so to try and be selling 4 races all at once in that first year. Like Nepal was flying and all the rest were distinctly not. And it was doing okay, right. But we were getting 15, 20 people, but then, so it was just a super ambitious plan without the right funding to put it into place, really.
Yeah. And what did the business look like at that point? What did the team look like when you were trying to get 4 events off the ground?
So it was myself all the time, obviously, 24 hours a day. And then we had 3 interns at the time in that first year. Over the summer, we had 3 interns who were doing sort of 3 or 4 days, 2 or 3 days a week, I think, at each. And that was it to some degree at that moment. We didn't have... It was only until year 2 that we started to have someone who came on board and handled a lot more of the operations and logistics. But in that first year, certainly it was, I was working with a lot of the people, inspired by Dave and the Yes Tribe, who wanted to do something different. And they would come and work for 3 to 6 months with me for free. And out of that, they got this incredible adventure and got to put on a race and learn. So that's what we kind of had to rely on early on in that first year, was interns and people who wanted to give months of their life and do something a bit epic, a bit different. That's pretty much how it was at that time.
Wow. So and then it was just you, herring around the world to different places, trying to work out what was going on. How that must have been incredibly difficult to wander into new countries, and like, how did that look? What was the process for going to a new country and from nothing?
Each one was slightly different on that respect. So Nepal, actually, we'd had someone helping us. Natalia had been helping us and introducing me to people. She knew Nepal quite well and introduced me to sort of 8 or 9 people. If you've got 8 or 9 introductions into a country and you meet all of them, you've probably got now 5 to 10 more connections, if not more, in terms of who they then go, oh, you should talk to this person, or what, if one of them clicks, then that's all you need. So Nepal went quite smoothly. Colombia was Colombia was awful. I landed in Bogota at 4 a.m., realized that, I was like, I need a coffee. And I'd never been to Latin America or a Spanish-speaking country before. So I landed in Bogota, having just watched Narcos, and being like, that in my head is that this is what Colombia is. It's not like that just for everybody. Like, Colombia couldn't be more beautiful, friendly, welcoming, all of those things. But at 4 a.m., when you first land to Bogota, and you're a little English man, and you realize you can't, like, because they do all of the coffee, they do it in ounces. So when I went to get a coffee at 4 a.m, I was like, I just need something to try and work out, because my Airbnb wasn't going to open till 7 a.m. And I stood there and I was like, I don't even know hello. I don't know any numbers. I can't order a coffee because I'm panicked. And so I then just got there, and I was it was literally an Airbnb. I was sharing a toilet with a cat. It was $9 a night. And honestly, it was the weirdest little time for me. And again, every single country has a different culture. When it comes to replying to emails, that's not a good like Colombian email replies aren't something you can rely on. And so I spent the first 5-6 days just like messaging, emailing everybody, like completely from scratch. I knew one person when I landed in country, and she wasn't even in the country. She was off in somewhere else at the time. So I was, completely starting fresh. And you just meet people, one meeting meets to another, one charity actually gets back to you and all these things, but it was looking really dire. And I remember calling up Matt, and Matt to this day, he's like, that's the most depressed I've ever heard you. You just were like, what am I doing here? I'm so far from home. I'm so, yeah. So, and then we just said, cool, if by Friday it's not working out, we've got some good connections in Ecuador, so we can just see whether we can start to make something work there instead. And then Friday morning, I get a message from a lady called Claudia Elena Vasquez, and she's married to the most famous pop star in Colombia. So in Colombia, like, there's Carlos Vives, then there's Shakira, right? Like, Shakira's the international star. Carlos Vives is like doesn't really speak any English, so all his songs are in Spanish. So next thing you know, I'm flying up to his hometown of Santa Marta. They want to, he's just set up a foundation in Santa Marta, and they want to work on the race. And so suddenly it kind of from there just like grew. And actually that was an example where it just grew way beyond what I 3 months into this, I didn't know how to deliver what they were looking for me to deliver. So Colombia is always this like little itch that I still need to scratch and go back to, because we've got something. I love the country. End up living there for quite some time, actually, through 2017, 2018, because I started, living there. And then Guatemala, a totally different story altogether, because I'd met someone at the World Travel Market who really got the idea of what we were trying to do. And when you go to the World Travel Market, I guess you've probably been, have you?
Yeah.
Quite a few times,
Yeah.
Ridiculous place, right?
Head explodes every time.
Oh, completely. And then you sit down with some operators and you try and explain, like, okay, cool, we're going to do this marathon, we're going to spend the time, we need to build a pop-up athletes village, like a campsite, then we want to go and work in social projects and go visit projects, and then we want to run a marathon in trails, and it's beautiful. At that point, people either got it or they really didn't get it. You just got these blank stares being like, okay, I offer treks to Dolpo region, I offer treks okay. These two people, Lily and Benedicto, just really got it. And next thing, they were like, when come out and visit. And I was like, well, I'm in Colombia in 2 weeks' time. Shall I pop up and see you? Like, yeah. And I met a chap called Victor Juarez, and Victor just sort of introduced me, took me all over the country trying to find the perfect place. Couldn't really do it. We got about 90% there all the time. And so each country, there's three countries in the first year were all really super, super different. And then now it's totally different, right? Because when we started up the race in Jordan, because of what we've built up over these 5 years, because people can see what we've what the platform is capable of. Suddenly in Jordan, my first meeting was with the Minister of Tourism, and then I was able to work with the Crown Prince Foundation to work out what are the best projects to select for this concept. And so, there's from landing in country with just me in a backpack going, cool, I'm just going to hit the emails and see what happens, to landing in country with someone going, right, we've got tomorrow morning, we've got the Minister of Tourism, then we're going to talk to Toyota about sponsorship, all of those things. You're like, cool, that's where we wanted to be.
Wow.
And I thought we'd probably be there in 2017, but it took till 2020 before we kind of got to that point. But yeah, that's life.
Yeah, amazing. But yeah, exactly. And I guess that's, like you say, that's what happens connections wise. You do more things, you take the little steps, and they always lead to 10, like they said, 10 more connections, and you just need one of those every so often to be, I guess, a big one, an influential one, and suddenly it opens an awful lot of doors off the back of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. And that works really well. And that's what's great is, right, that's transposable across any country in the world. Any country in the world, there's always someone in that, and especially in trail running, or even just in travel, or even just in social work, right? Most countries, there's that one person. In Nepal, it's Jimmy Ustrom, who works at the UNDP, but also has done so much for trail running. Once Jimmy started, it took a couple of years for Jimmy to really connect with us. But once Jimmy's involved, everything else can, he knows how to take care of the other stuff, and he knows how to support. So it takes some time to build up the trust and the relationship, but once you find those kind of people, the world of trail running in most countries is pretty small.
Yeah, nice. So I guess tell us a bit more about Impact, Nick, then. So just, I guess, for people who aren't familiar with the business and what you do, just give us a quick overview of the model and how it works, and I guess where you are and where you run things at the moment.
So the model, well, it's shifting at the moment, but the model that we've had for the first 5 years, very much the case that we basically take people out for 1 week. As I said before, we build this pop-up athletes village somewhere stunning, somewhere you'd never normally go, somewhere that just takes you a bit out of their comfort zone and creates this sense of community. So we live in the athletes village. We then spend 3-4 days in the community, visiting projects, supporting projects. Sometimes there's hands-on work. Sometimes it's more listening and learning. Sometimes it's where we, more and more, we've gone to the community call. This is the platform. What do you want us, where do we actually have a skill set, right? Because there's no point building something as we're not skilled builders, but what we do have is the money to pay local skill builders to build something, right? What we can then do is learn or create energy and event, and even just having an event like this, having a race in the village of Kakani in Nepal brings 200, 300 people up from Kathmandu to run that fills up guest houses, that makes the restaurants full, right? This is all about kind of all the different levels of what is impact. So we spend a week visiting projects, working at projects. Every so often we might throw in a bit of a tourist thing. I try not to, but sometimes it's too tempting. So in Jordan, we're driving past Petra. It seems obtuse of me not to let everybody get out and go see Petra. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid it, but I couldn't. And so, and then next up, we have a bit of time off, and then race day, where all of the trail running community for that country then comes and joins in that race. And we have a big celebration race, 10 kilometer, 21 kilometer, or 42. So it's not always the full marathon for those who aren't the biggest runners. And we have this incredible group from across the world that comes together for 1 week, one moment, to take on one cause. And each race ties in with one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's our focus point. So in Nepal, it's about gender equality. In Jordan, it's about water and sanitation. And so we then go and find the projects that are at the front line of that global goal and go and support them with fundraising, with storytelling, with the platform to network. Within our community, we've got one man who he likes to recruit from the impact community. So he's just like, I love going to impact marathons because I always find new people to run companies or businesses for me. So
wow.
He comes for that, for the network alone. And so, but also for the charity's perspective, they're getting to tap into this network and they're getting this chance to tell a story and we work with kind of pretty much local organizations. So this is a really big opportunity you've got 2-3 days with 50 people who have within it the power to make a difference in the lives of others. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then race day, and then we go home after a bit of a party.
Yeah.
The party doesn't always, the party I always talk about, but 50% of the time everyone's shattered and it's just chilling.
Yeah.
Just like the party is just like having a beer and just zoning out into the surrealness of what just happened that day. Every so often there's a big party and dancing, but most of the time, and I'm shattered anyway. I'm just like...
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I've been there at the end of a marathon, and sort of basically just curled up in a ball on the floor in a field, and just like, oh, I'll go to sleep. I think someone's trying to give me a beer. Like
someone comes to the finishing line. Would you like to sob gently or have a beer? Sob gently. Okay, this way you can sob gently.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. So, and then you said there's obviously the model's changed slightly. I guess locals. You've had locals running historically anyway in the races, haven't you? But then it's switched a bit more that way recently.
Yeah, and that's been something that I've wanted to see happen. But you get so caught up in trying to keep the organization going. You get so caught up in the stresses and strains of the daily. We still don't have a particularly big team, so you don't always have the freedom and the space to think creatively, even if there's something that's just literally staring you there in the face. And last year in Guatemala, which is, probably the country where we've got most engagement from the runners, I got lots of messages in the run-up to the week saying, I'm really excited about the marathon, but we want to be involved in the impact too. And at the same time, we've been having a discussion for 2 years about wanting more diversity in the athletes' village. Like, if we're going to have discussions about changing the world, we need to have every country possible in that discussion. We need to have every background possible. We need to have every race possible. We need to have every economic model. Like, we need to have a diverse athletes' village to have a really powerful discussion. So that was in there. And then there was the case of, okay, cool, we want to make sure that we're not just, from a carbon perspective, we don't want to say, okay, cool, come fly all this way just for one run, and so there's so many different factors that all blended into this. And as well, I said at the beginning, the whole goal was to grow lots of races, and actually it does take about a year and a half to build up a race. And so that kind of hamstrings us in that respect. And we didn't want that to be that anymore. So we've still got the week-long thing is, as and when it's possible for us to all travel freely and all of these things, and it will benefit the community. Then we've got all of the races lined up, and hopefully the back end of this year is going to be super, super busy, which is great. But in amongst this, with the Guatemala race, we wanted to try and do something different and make sure the race could still go on, because you can socially distance a race. It's really possible to, especially trail running, right? You're nowhere near anybody most of the time, and that's what's great about it. But the Guatemalan team was just like, look, we want to put the race on. Can we do it? And but we didn't want to lose that impact side. I didn't want to just do a race, because that's not what we were about. We didn't set up to be that. We wanted to empower people. So then we came up with this idea that actually, what if we could do this over 2 days? What if we could do one day where it's all around the impact, just like all the greatness of an impact week crammed into 2 days, but driven by the local team, designed for the local runners, and actually saying, cool, it's time for like impact should be about Guatemalans and Central Americans supporting Central American programs. And if we can untap that, it opens up fundraising to a different level. It opens up so many different things. And then if you extrapolate it to the future, if you still have the international week-long thing there, everybody running has interacted with that social goal, with that global goal in this respect. And then it's a really beautiful thing. So that's kind of how the X Impact series was born, was really just saying, cool, how do we condense everything that's great about Impact Week? Because all of the trail runners in Guatemala say that this race is different, the atmosphere is different, the energy is different. And we've got that feedback from every single race. There's something different. And the difference is that everyone's not running because it's a race and they want a medal. They're running because they want to be part of something bigger. And there's this really amazing thing. And then there's the little things that we do, the way that we handle the aid stations. It feels like you've just come home. Like, it feels really nice, and we've always got like really engaged people at each of the aid stations. Those kind of things are all what make it really special. And we wanted to see, can we do that over 2 days instead of a whole week, as well as
and you've talked about the power of community, and like, I guess how much benefit that has from a business perspective as well. Because I think again, when we spoke briefly before, and you said, if someone's going on a holiday to Spain to sit on the beach, then if your taxi's slightly late, then you're furious and you chuck your toys out the pram. Yeah. Whereas if you're going to an event like this, where there is that sense of community and people are going towards a cause, then you've almost got license for all sorts to go, to go awry, and people are just all part of it. They want to help, they want to put the things together. And again, like you're saying, I guess in the kind of locations that you're doing it in, there's so many possible things that could go wrong, which we can come on to maybe some examples of that in a minute. But yeah, that community thing, I guess, has played a big part in it.
Yeah, and that whole, where we've got an incredible return rate of impact runners, and that's something that I think was also part of the whole thing about, if you just have the one race, one country, you'll get 2 or 3 people who become like aficionados that way, like I'm there every year, and that's great. By having more races, people were like, cool, where are we going to go? And so if you have we had a really good group in Malawi once, and they were just all going, and then as soon as 2 or 3 of them signed up to Guatemala, boom, suddenly 20 of them were returning from Malawi to Guatemala, and it creates this core. But then also it's a super open, welcoming group, and more people come into it through there. And so that's what I think is really great, is because that impact community's grown really nicely. If there's new people who are at their first impact marathon, they are properly welcomed in. Like, everybody's got that energy. And so when I think this year in Guatemala, literally we hired one of the big chicken buses, the camionetas. So in Guatemala, you've got these school buses. They paint them up. They put a turbo in the engine, and that totally like crazy. Like, no tourist ever is, as a tourist, you're told never travel. And most of my Guatemalan friends would never travel in a camioneta. But it's such a great experience. And that's kind of how the team gets around sometimes anyway as well, that we wanted to give. And you see them on the roads, they look incredible. And they're so loud and intense. And we wanted to have that. So we hire out our own chartered one. And that literally, we were just going along, and the gear lever came out in the guy's hand. Like, literally, and it was, I was driving behind, because we've always got the pickup truck for exactly these circumstances. I was driving behind, and it's going along fine. Just something wasn't quite right, and there was nothing dangerous happening. It was just a case of, because as well, we do all the normal things. We risk assess these things. We do the vehicle checks. We check out the vehicles before the race even anyone turns up. We go and visit. We've got all of these things, but you still can't factor a gear stick just pulling out in a man's hand, because these vehicles are like this. So they pull up at the side of the road, and then the next thing you know, we're kind of I was like, well, people need the toilet, so we just got everyone into the pickup truck, took them out to the toilet, and everyone's like, and that's it, right? You can do these things in especially when we're quite small. Our teams are sort of 50 odd people at each race. You can do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do on a normal tour, and and people are up for that adventure, which they're probably not if they're just going for a few days in Magaluf. You're not so up for
the chicken bus. Yeah, absolutely. I spent a year in Honduras, where similar setup with all the, like you say, the old school buses, and having had that experience, I'm not overly surprised that gear sticks were falling out of people's hands, having sat on many of them, because they are old, battered up things, aren't they?
They really are. And it's the speed they go around there. So when you're on it normally, there's a road that goes from Antigua, where we live, up to Guatemala City, which is just super windy, and they do it like a Formula One track. And honestly, it's like an upper body workout holding onto the seat above. You're like full on tense.
Yeah, just looking over cliff edges.
Completely. And there's times, the first time I got on one, the first corner, I slid from one side of the bus all the way across the aisle into the next seat. That's how far we shifted. Like, I better hold on then. That's just so that, you know, that's why don't go on them. Don't go on them from a safety tourist perspective. We're not recommending going on them, but if you can do it safely, if you can charter your own one, you can limit the amount of things. But again, even with that, we've pulled up to pick up some people and someone's just opened the door and jumped on because they thought it was a normal camionette. No, look around, like, this feels weird.
So, and what have you, I guess, have you done anything, Nick, to foster the community? Like, I guess beyond the fact that there is a great cause and set up behind it, is there anything in particular you've done that sort of brings those people together regularly, or like anything like that?
We don't do enough in a formal way, and we've talked about this a lot because so much then happens organically afterwards, and we've seen things. And I think a really good example is after this year's race, one of the chaps on it, he had all of the big things that can happen in your life happen at the same time as a global pandemic was starting, in terms of relationship breakout, new job, like trying to all of those things, and and he was moving house. So the big three really there: girlfriend, job, and house. Straight away, who was it who was there? It was the impact crew. Cool, I'll stay at your house. Cool, I'll do that. And so suddenly there was this, and that's just really, really cool to have. And so there's organic elements of it. We've not done nearly enough to kind of foster that. We do kind of reunions and global, like for all of the races to come to. We have those kind of things happening. It's been hamstrung a bit by the fact that I'm very rarely in the UK, and then also hamstrung by the fact that actually, we've got a huge crew from Canada. We've got London, we've got snippets of America. Chicago's a mini hub, so we don't have the chance to do so much. But I think it's during that week we set everything, the values of what we're doing. People have bought into those from a long time before, so people are coming knowing that they're going to be in a group of people with shared values. People are coming with that openness, and then we as a team encourage that. And I think things such as getting everybody onto the chicken bus, I know it sounds silly, but the cold showers in Nepal, nothing bonds people more than a cold shower, right? And it's just that experience, that bit of out of comfort zone. Everyone's kind of looking for support from others, and so that naturally does it. So I think the whole experience is very organically around community building. And then we just think about things. I'm not the best when it comes to booking buses, you can tell. But we've got Mark, Bethany, the ops people. They're brilliant at making sure everything is just like really as on it as it can be. I spend more of my time focusing on the energy flows. Okay, cool. If this is the athletes' village, where are we going to welcome people? How are we going to what's going to happen when people walk into their tent, their room? How are we going to make them feel that they've come to a place where they're welcome and safe, and they're going to be, and that they can open up and be that person that they can't be in the office, or that person they've not been with their family for 20 years. How do we make people feel that they can be that person that they know they are inside in this place? So I spend most of my time thinking about that, which makes me sound a bit airy-fairy, like, oh yeah, Nick's going to talk about and the team always laugh about it, but that's what makes the team good, right? They're just taking care of those things, and I don't need to worry about it, and I'm taking care of like airy-fairy stuff, like energy flow.
Yeah, let's play into that a little bit then, because I've heard you talk about spending time or taking time to invest in yourself from a leadership point of view. So tell us a bit more about that. Like, if you are doing that, what kind of things are you doing to, I guess, help develop that skill set?
I mean, that's just like this constant ongoing thing, right? As a leader, no matter, I always think about it from the perspective, I think it was Eddie Merckx, the Tour de France, 5-time Tour de France winner, and they said, when does cycling get easy? It never gets easy. It just gets faster. And I think that's the case when you're growing something, you're building something. It just gets faster. So, I think that you've always got to find that place where you can be creative. And as a leader of an organization, it's your role to make the tough calls. There's certain things you can do in admin and all of those things that are helpful, and you can quickly do stuff and things like that. But most of the time it's about honing in what is the right decision. And that's about experience, I think. But it's also just about learning and just things as simple as dedicating time to reading, dedicating time to going out on my long runs, which are where all of the best ideas happen. Showers and long runs, right? And most of the time in where we're living, showers aren't a great thing. So long runs are going to have to do. And so from a daily perspective, it's like showers. It's like, I don't know why I've got into showers. Showers don't.
It's not that sort of a podcast, Nick. Not that sort of a dude.
Showers and long runs. No, long runs. Daily meditations, making sure that I'm reading, making sure that so if we've got meetings starting at 8:00, I will head into town at 7 and have breakfast, and I'll have a walk. I'll listen to my audiobook, have a walk, have my time, whether it's emails or just sit there having a coffee and my breakfast before then having the team meeting at 8. That sort of thing, making sure that I'm coming in with the right energy every day, and that side of things I think is super, super important. But small things like I'll always make sure that I've got my own tent during race week or my own space, because once you're sharing with the team, there's this element of pressure, and you want to have that space to go, okay, cool, what's happened today, and think it through without that sort of thing. And then there's the more strategic stuff. So I'm taking this time now to start a master's in international development, to really hone in on that ability, that social side. How do we effectively deliver social impact, and how do we communicate that? Because if your experience of charity is watching comic relief, then there's nothing wrong with that, just to make that clear. But it is one element of what it is to make an impact. And so what we're trying to do, and potentially it sort of almost hamstrings us, because we're really trying to get that level of what is the best way to have an impact right. It's really quick and easy to say, cool, we're going to go and build a new toilet at a school. But again, is that really the best way to have an impact? No. Yeah. This year in Guatemala, so I've gone off topic here. I'm going to put it back in, and we can talk about that stuff later. But so that's that element of, okay, cool, I really want to be understanding of that, and I'm really fired up about that. So regularly taking courses, and regularly developing myself on a strategic level, as well as the daily habits that help you sort of stay energized and positive. And the one thing for sure over 5-6 years of doing this is, if you are as a leader are on fire and energized and buzzing and excited, that's exactly what the organization will be. If you're not, if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling worried, that will also permeate through not just the organization, but the people who are around the organization. And so when you're talking to people on a Zoom call and you're not at your best energy, then impact's not going to be at its best energy either. So yeah, even just taking the time before, just click, because we're so obsessed right now with Zoom, right? We just click it, we're on to the next one, we're on to the next one. I'm consciously spending 1 minute before every Zoom, just breathing, meditating, visualizing, feeling excited, and getting that energy level up in myself. Otherwise, we're just sat here, and it's pretty boring. Lots of people aren't moving around to different places. Even within their house, you kind of, after about 3 weeks of sat at the same desk, it's like, oh man, I want to be somewhere else. So, but that time to just re-energize and get excited and be like, cool, what do I want to come from this? Like, I've got a call now with Tom. How do I want, Tom to feel whilst having a call with me? What do I want that to feel like? That time, that 1 minute, that's all it is. Even if I'm late for a call, cool. If I'm already late, 1 minute's not gonna make a difference. Like, just take that 1 minute to calm yourself, and then energize yourself, and then go for it. Because, no one else is going to do that. No one else is going to do that for you. And when you're setting up and you're a solopreneur, when you've got a small team, or I guess even when you've got a huge team, it's still the same, right? You've got to come in and be the energy that you want your organization to be known for.
Yeah, love it. I've tried to bring in some like watching comedy and things like that. Just like little 5-minute snippets of something, again, like in between calls or that kind of thing, to switch out into a happy place, because like you say, it's obviously at the moment in particular, it's very hard to fight all the battles and not get bogged down into the minutiae of the small issues, even when there's lots of bigger exciting things going on.
Those little things, if you think about when you had an office with people in it and all that sort of thing, you'd finish a call. Let's say you're on a normal call, you'd finish that, and you would then chat to someone about that call, or you'd throw that idea, or someone would take the mick out of you for saying something ridiculous on that call, right? And there was that little like secondary social benefits that came from being around people. That now you come off a call, I'll go and get a coffee, I guess. Might pat the dog, you know, and it's like, okay, cool. We need to actively go beyond that, because you can do that for a month. You can do it for, we've all been doing it, 10, 11 months now, you know, and this is probably longer by the time this goes out, I believe. So, you know, it'll be over a year, in fact, by the time people listen to this, since we've been experiencing this world. And as we saw, each lockdown in particular has got a little bit harder in terms of, okay, we're now more prepared for it. We're not so worried about the actual what we can and can't do and all those stuff. But you felt like this general kind of energy levels of the nation have dropped each time. And it's up to us as the people who are leaders, the people who are energetic people, to go, cool, what more can we do to stay and keep energizing these things? Because otherwise, it can get super, super difficult.
Like it. So and then just feeding that into some of the things you said there, with obviously having staff around the world, like how have you gone about growing the team? You know, how has that process of recruiting people happened? How do you find the experience of, you know, people being around the world? I guess it's, everyone's getting used to the Zoom lifestyle and stuff running the business, but I guess that's just the norm. If you're, you know, it's opening a lot of people's eyes to the opportunity of remoteness. But how do you find that? How have you gone about setting that up?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, because obviously, like, Zoom meetings and WhatsApp calling, you know, this stuff of running an organization that way has been how we've been doing it for 5 years. And there's times when I remember one time I was on a conference call to Colombia whilst hitchhiking in the back of a pickup truck in Nepal, literally via the signal, right? So that norm has been like that for quite some time, but being fixed in one place is slightly different. In terms of the team, as was before, you know, I've tried to find a way to kind of create a blueprint that's replicable about different countries. But the fact is that it's particularly in the countries we're working in, there's not always a really easily replicable model. And so even by the shape of the week, in Nepal, we have a night in Kathmandu, then we have to like literally hike to get to the village, and then the village take care of it from there. So how do you manage operations with the team up in a village with really, really, really limited signal? Okay, cool. So those kind of things are all super different every time we try, and in each country. So most of the time, it starts with the organization and the charity. Once we've found a really strong organization, a really strong charity, a really strong network and partner, normally someone from in that world, and it's never like super obvious at the beginning, becomes like the main person, the person who just gets it, who gets on. So in Guatemala, we've got Pablo. Pablo was working as a guide for our logistics operator in year one. And he also was just really good at photography. So they're like, look, we've got a guide who's really good at photography. You know, do you want him as your photographer? Well, yeah. And he came in, and oh my goodness, like, nice to this day, he's too nice. I find it distressing how nice he is, and it really frustrates me. Pablo is good, but he's just brilliant, right? He just gets it, you know, super, you know, perfect bilingual, all of these things. And then we've brought on someone new, Jackie, who's race director this year, and she's just you know, she was a race director in another race. And so I think we're looking for people with experience in delivering races that we can, who are looking for an opportunity to do it on a more global level with a bit more support. But they understand the basic stuff of how to put on a race. But things like the getting more people involved, all of those different things, and they want to up their game. That's the right person for us. Someone who's like got experience, but now wants to up their game and wants to have an opportunity to potentially, you know, and we want to grow more races around Central America. So that team that's like that little hub that's building in Guatemala, great. Well, actually, Honduras would be a really, really cool place for an impact marathon. We should chat. And we want to build those up. And so we want to, like, these people that we've got in each area. We've got Manoj Karki in Nepal, and you know, he's just and the whole team would say he's more talented than any of our team, right? He is unbelievably good. You can put him trying to solve how to put up a tent, or you can put him being diplomatic with the national park, who are saying, nope, we're banning running races this year. What? Who's doing that? No. Manoj will go and solve that, and he will do it in a way that's like within the values, right? He's not going to go in there and slam down his book and start screaming and shouting, right? He's going to go and sit and have teas for 3 hours and solve it. And so, you have these people who just are the right people with the right values. And over 2 or 3 years of working with us as members of the team, what we're doing now is really focusing on training them up to now lead that race themselves. And so
do they generally come from kind of the circle you have already? So is it or are you going out and finding them particularly? Are they almost coming to you because they hear about impact and the part of the community already?
Honestly, they come from Manoj, for instance, was interning at the operator that we were doing the buses and stuff with, and they were, he just got more and more involved. There was another one, year one, Kershaw. Actually, it was really early on. I was a few days into Nepal, and they were, we've got an intern at the moment called Kershaw, and honestly, business isn't very good. We don't have a lot of work for her at the moment. So she's yours. And I was like, okay. I walk in and she's just there. I don't know what to do. I've got a Nepali intern. This is great, but I have no idea what to do. And I couldn't tell. She came out, did a meeting with me, and I couldn't tell whether she was totally rubbish or totally brilliant. I really couldn't. And to this day, she's totally brilliant. And actually, through Impact, I got to write the reference for her to go study in a Canadian university, and it was the easiest reference in the world to write, because she there's so much talent in every of the countries that we're in. If my ability to write a reference can open up a door like that, then that goes far and above anything we can. We pay anything in terms of it's like we can open up connections like that. That's really exciting to me. Yeah. So Kershaw, Nikki, I call him Nikki. I shouldn't call him Nikki. His name is Manoj, but early on I called him Nicki Minaj, and it was a joke, and it kept on going. And then he's even on his Instagram, he's Nicki Minaj, and I feel really bad because it's like that's not his name. His name is Manoj, but it's still Nikki. He's amazing.
If he's using it himself, that's got to be a good sign.
He fully he has it as AKA Nikki on his Instagram. All good, but I feel like it's pretty it was a joke. It was just one joke that's gone too far, and I want him to be known as Manoj because that's his name. And then Pablo and Jackie. So in each country again, people just come to the fore who just buy into what we're doing and want to be part of it, and also see an opportunity in it. And I think that's important, right? I know that Jackie really wants to be helping us set up more races, right? That's definitely a goal of hers. Okay, cool, right? That's great. It's good to know what people's motivations are when you bring them on. If it is that you want to connect and be able to have connections so that you can travel abroad and do things because visas are really crippling for Nepalis, then that's great. That's cool. We're really open. It doesn't matter. As long as we know what your motivation is, we're going to find a way to empower you to achieve that. And I think that's the heart of the team. And Mark, who was doing our operations for 3-4 years, that was his whole goal, was how do we train up people? We want this team. If we want an athletes village that's diverse, we need a team that's diverse. And at the end of the first few races, the photo was 8 white people in Nepal having put on a race. It's cool.
Yeah.
But that's not the goal of what Impact is. And so we have to actively, because it's easy, right? There's always someone messaging saying, cool, I want to come out and help on your race. And that you're going to get someone, 9 times out of 10, we get someone who's really good, who buries himself for the team. But firstly, that's not a carbon efficient way of doing it to fly out 8 people. It's not a financially efficient way of doing it. And it's also not what the race is meant to be about. But it's hard to make sure that certain, and early on we gave away too much too soon, and we had a couple of 2 races in 2017 where there was too much on the operator, and it was it didn't deliver to the way that we wanted it to deliver. And so that was one of the lessons that we learned. It just takes time to build people through and make sure that everything's happening from a health and safety perspective, nothing else, right?
Yeah I think definitely it's one of those things as a small business is you have it's balancing the challenge of wanting to deliver on all those things, but I guess understanding that you can't deliver on all of them simultaneously, and it's kind of like how do you build towards that vision that you've got to implement those things, so not forgetting about them, but at the same time, if you, like you say, if you swing too far one way, then it might cripple the business and the business not be successful, and then you don't achieve all those things that you could achieve down the line. And I guess from I can sort of, from where we are at the moment as well, like empathize with that feeling of you want to do all those things, and there's big goals of where we're going and what we can do with it, and having that kind of at the forefront of the consideration when you're doing it, but realizing that when you're a team of 5 or 10, that that's not in a for us in a little town in Yorkshire, it's it can be tricky doing those things, and but if you create something that is successful and does grow, then it kind of opens up all those opportunities to to do more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's switch it up then to you touched on marketing a bit earlier, Nick. So let's talk about your marketing, and I guess anything in particular that has worked extremely effectively for you, anything that you've tried that hasn't worked well at all. Where have you kind of got the best bang for your buck, do you think?
It's cliche, but it's true, is that, word of mouth, right? People that bring their friends and they come to one race and they come back with 10 the next time, that's absolutely like the only effective and consistent way, right? Because you can spend on Facebook, but at some point they'll change the algorithm, or Apple will come out and say, cool, we're gonna block it so that you can't track anybody, right? Suddenly the whole Facebook system is like, okay, cool, well, how do we do this effectively? But yeah, advertising directly on Facebook has been, strong for us, particularly when we got some people on board who were really, really smart on that side of things, on how to get the most out of every pound you spend on social media advertising. So they've been brilliant, and that's definitely helped. So I would say that the best thing is word of mouth. We've done some influencer marketing. We'd like to do more of that. But on the right terms, and we've very much done it from an organic perspective, saying, come and tell your story. We're not expecting you to, we're not saying, cool, if you get 5 people, you have to come and, you get a free place. Nothing like that. It's like, just tell your story. Don't have to promote it, just super, super organic. And that has a pro and a con to it, because, maybe you don't get as much engagement through that kind of like that influencer push, but also you then at least get a really genuine story out of the back of it. And I think it's so important, particularly with the general attitude towards the influencer market itself. The more organic, the better. Anything that feels too paid or forced or faked is like not it. So we don't pay someone to come on one of our trips, because they're going to get an incredible trip and it's going to change their life. So if they really want that, then they're probably the wrong person to work with us. So that's been really effective. And then just tapping into other partnerships. We partnered early on with Street Child, who have their race in Sierra Leone, and they brought 28 people to that first race in Nepal, which was huge for us as an organization in our first year. That was amazing. So real mix of things. I would say the only really, really effective thing has been the fact that I always went with the kind of field of dreams approach of build it and they will come, which is a painful approach over 2 or 3 years, but I think over 10 or 15 years is a really good approach. I'm convinced of that. I keep telling myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think and I'll probably come to this in a little while, but when you have, it all depends on what you're building. And if you are building something that is good and the product, the service, the thing that you offer is amazing, and then you throw in a cause behind it and something you're trying to do, which is also amazing, then you have so much more scope to lean on that kind of attitude. Whereas I think a lot of people have that attitude, but they don't create an amazing thing, and they don't have a cause that they're pushing towards, and that generally falls flat on its face if you take that kind of approach.
When you're looking at people to work with, do you really kind of vet that out as well when you're going to support people, whether it's SEO or market or PR? how do you start to vet out the people who have got a genuine, like, they're going to see through their values to the nth degree, or those going, cool, I'm going to try this out, kind of thing?
As much as we can. I mean, it's again, I'm the person who speaks to people from kind of in the sales process in the run up to them starting with us, and I'm always as honest and kind of frank with them as I can be when I start. And it kind of depends what they want. If they just purely want SEO stuff, then you can get away without that a little bit, and there's things that we can do without it. But then once we start bolting on things like PR or social or email or things like that, the more the story that you have within it becomes more and more influential. So we try to sort of give people ideas and nudge them in that sort of direction. Obviously, some people are more receptive to it than others, and you've got to kind of find the balance between saying no, we'll only work with people who have a fantastic story behind them, versus if you don't, we're not going to do something. I think we've had it with people where they've come on and they're maybe not interested in that kind of conversation earlier on, but as they build their relationship with us and they see the success that they have, they become more open to those kind of things, where we might be suggesting something that 3-6 months earlier to them would have sounded wacky and they would have closed off straight away. Whereas, by that point, they think, I can see the potential of this. Because you mentioned things like influencer marketing or social media. Yeah. So, if people potentially have either been stung by it or they just don't believe in it. And, I think coming from a fresh, blank relationship, trying to convince them otherwise is quite a tricky thing. But you can take steps towards that and start to ease into it over time.
Yeah. And how do you talk through, because this is something that I'm quite interested in this side of things. You're an expert, right? You're the expert in marketing. I just have a passion for this, right? Because that's one of the definite things that I've struggled with from a marketing perspective, is when something hasn't worked. Influencer marketing is a really good example. I had one person who literally a week before she was meant to fly out was like, I'm really tired. I need to spend some time to center myself. So I'm not going to, and I can't get the flight back. Now, it was awful. It was a third of our budget for that year. We were doing, it was tough, right? Wow. And so, like, how do you guide people through not making that mistake in the first place? But as marketing, some things work, some things don't. Every marketing person has always said to me about trial and error as part of it. How do you kind of work through that with the guys you work with?
Yeah, I think similar as you've said there, Nick, that again, being kind of transparent at the start, where, particularly when we're talking about PR type things, that, if you're running a campaign that is creative in its nature and you're going and pitching it to journalists, there's no guarantee as to what kind of coverage might come off. You might run two things that are exactly the same, and in February that thing lands and is fantastic, but you run it in November and it just falls on its face, and there's no obvious reason why that is. It's just, maybe the news agenda was very busy in that season, in that period, and people weren't in it. But maybe the reason the thing picked up in February was because one core publication decided to run it, and then off the back of that, everything got picked up, and that didn't happen in the November one. So there's all sorts of things like that. I always try, when we talk about doing it, is to get people on board with the kind of spreading the risk idea, and that we're not putting all the eggs in one basket. It's, if we, like with our creative campaigns, we run them we run 4 over the course of a year. So every quarter we're running a campaign, and there might be 1 or 2 that don't do brilliantly well, but you just need one of them to really hit the mark, and you get lots and lots of benefit off that. So it's kind of giving yourself the chance to fail. So because when the one hits the mark, you will still get more than your return on investment across the 4 that you do. Go at the influencer thing, is a really tricky one. I think it's just about building that relationship and that trust with people ahead of time, and making sure you pick the right person. And that's obviously far easier said than done. And it's not something we've done a huge amount of, to be honest, I think. But whenever we're doing it, it's just the thing to be super wary of is, I would always look for someone who is like has lots of engagement and is very specific to you, so that their audience is your audience, rather than someone. I think a lot of people sort of think, I'll just get someone off Towie because they've got 1 million followers, and they just sort of chuck everything at that. And I'd rather have someone. Dave Cornthwaite is a great example of this, actually, where you compare him to some other people in that kind of space. He's got a big following, but it's not like a ridiculously big following. But they are so engaged, they will literally walk off a cliff after Dave if he's doing something like that.
It is cult-like.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone like him, you can almost guarantee that if a sponsor gives him some gear and he wears it, that everyone will be like, oh, look, Dave's got that gear, so they will go and buy it. So they're some of the kind of pitfalls, but I think exactly as you put it, just being aware and being prepared and ready for the fact that some of them won't work, and then you just hone in on the ones that do. I mean, you've talked, you mentioned word of mouth there. I guess how have you cultivated that word of mouth? I know like storytelling and like the Instagram side of things have been quite effective for you, I think. Yeah. So how did that come about? Is that something that just naturally happened, or was it sort of strategic thing?
Yeah, I think the fact is that it's a really unique event, right? There's not a lot of marathons out there. To be honest, there's Sierra Leone and there's Uganda, and then that's pretty much it in terms of ones where you'll go out for a week and all of the different things and that social impact and that combination. So if someone's signing up to run on a live volcano in Guatemala, they're going to talk about it because it's flipping cool. And so I think part of it is just like where we pick. We want to pick an iconic race route, somewhere that people are going to want to talk about. And then everything else, it comes back to those values, which then comes back to that, okay, build it and they will come approach of create something really, really strong, and I've focused everything on, and I think as well, there's this element of real responsibility, right? Because I'm there through the week. I'm chatting to all of the people on this trip all the time. So when it's not good or when it's not going well, or I'm like on the front line experiencing it and feeling it, which puts him, I probably take on too much pressure on myself about that because screw it, everyone's there by their own free will, they're there to have a good time, right? So, but I'm always thinking about that. And so I think that people buy into the care and attention that we put into it because they get to know the team throughout the whole week, and they, we're there on the course, and when someone's really, really struggling and they come past, then there's a good chance they're going to get a sweaty, give me a sweaty hug, and it's gonna, and I but also we've been on this journey. I know that the reason that person is running is because of XYZ, and I can say those things to that person at that point, and they can see that care and attention, and so that's pretty much where it is. And then you feel part of that community, and it really works nicely. So I don't think there's anything specific we've done to encourage it. In fact, we've never really done the bring a friend, get £50 off type of thing, because that's not we tested it and it doesn't make a difference. People will either recommend their friends or they won't, right? Like they won't. If people are into impact, they're not going to recommend their friend to save £50 because they're already going to be spending however much they're spending on Impact Marathon. So and they're already in on it. So it really comes from the values, and that value is focused on creating something genuinely powerful, genuinely like awesome trail route, and really focus on that energy and that atmosphere. Then it just comes, and has just come, and people come. There's one chap, Joe, who came to our first ever race, and the reason we have such a big following in Canada is single-handedly down to him. Second night he just pulled me aside and said, Nick, I get everything you're trying to do here. I'm all in. And then next thing you know, he's bringing 20 people to Guatemala the year later. And then he brought another 20 to Malawi, and then he brought another 20 to Guatemala. And it's just like, that's what he's brought. And then those people have all, from there we get, incredible, Scott and Jen, who then went and got loads of money from the company to then be donating directly to the organizations throughout the year. And they're bringing more. So yeah, it's just super organic. And then just the friendships, and living nomadically also helps because I can be like, cool, I'm going to be in Ottawa next week. Anybody, and then I've always got a place to live now, which is great.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. I mean that, again, just tying exactly what you said, like the having, and you can look at this for you, I guess it is this kind of the values and the thing that you offer that almost in and of itself, because the asset is so good, you almost, it does sell itself. Book them, they will come. Like, build it, they will come. It's that happens for itself. I guess, you know, the for other businesses who are listening, you know, there's obviously a push to potentially try to incorporate something like that into what they're doing in a genuine way. But I think the other side of that is, you know, not from a content point of view, or create some sort of asset at the center of what it is that you do, rather than just, you know, if you're a tour operator or an accommodation site or, you know, something like that, that you're just sitting and relying on the fact that that's your business doesn't give you much. It makes the marketing so much harder. Like, you have to pedal twice as fast to get the same results. Whereas if you have something really valuable at the core of what you do, then everything sort of flies.
And I think also just keeping that voice there. Like, we don't try and be too professional on our Instagram, you know, because that's like, we're really good at what we do, but yeah, there's crap happening behind the scenes sometimes, and we're not going to shy away from showing, like, blimey, you know, we just found hippos on the course. We're going to have to reroute this, you know, whatever it is. So, and throughout the year as well, just bringing people into the different characters in the team and giving people that connection to us as individuals. Like, we're not a corporate, we're not like you within our social channel and our marketing channels. We're still going to be us, because when you sign up, you're going to get a message from Bethany. You're going to probably have a question about fundraising, so you're going to come to me. There's no, like, you've got direct access to all of us, and during the week, I'm going to be taking cold showers with, like, not with you, obviously, but I'm going to be taking cold showers as well, right?
Here we go again.
There it is with the shower again. What is it with this? Goodness me, people are going to really think.
I think this is going to be the title of the podcast. How showers can work for you.
The benefit of showers. Great ideas. So, you know, we're in it together. And actually, when it comes to the projects, we also, you know, we hand over to the community to decide what's happening and to organize it. So if the first hour of a project, nearly 9 times out of 10, the first hour of a project is super awkward. It just is. And there's nothing I've ever found to be able to do that, apart from just tell everyone, look, first hour, you're probably going, you know, it's going to be a bit awkward. Even when you just do a project visit, you walk into a hospital or something like that. Let's say we're visiting a hospital. It's awkward. It is. That doesn't mean the story's not powerful. That doesn't mean we're not going to learn from this. Yeah. But that physical awkwardness of being somewhere that we don't quite know how to act. Do we sit here? Do we stand? How do I put scrubs on? Whatever it is, there's an awkwardness. And I'm experiencing that with everybody. And we as a team have said, like, it's not our story to tell in terms of the challenges facing Guatemalans. That's the Guatemalan story to tell. It's not my story to tell. I can add some context to it. I can share my experiences through it. But the core of the story is going to be told by Sarah, Abby, and the team and the Guatemalan team, right? They're the ones telling their story, and we need to give them that space to do it. And so because of that, when we go to a project, I'm always trying to work out, okay, you know, if it's a hands-on project in particular, I don't know how to dig a pipeline, but I'm working it out, and then we work it out together. And that's part of it. Okay. It's like that team experience of, okay, cool. Well, if that's happening there, it's the same. And so we, by being in it with everybody, like, we know we're really good at certain things. And, you know, come race day, we know we've got a really brilliant team, and all of that's taken care of, and we work with great doctors, and all, you know, and we know that through the week we've done all the risk assessments, we've thought about this, everything's okay. But then when it comes to when we're going to visit a project, I'm with you. I'm sat with you, listening and learning as well, and I'm not trying to sort of differentiate myself there. And I think that's quite an important part of that, and we let that show in our marketing channels. We let that show with our Instagram stories is we're giving people insight into the team as well, and what we're trying to achieve in different things, and not try and be too slick and professional, not over worry on that, because you can get perfection can get in the way of the good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has the opposite effect. When it starts to look too slick, people don't believe it as much versus the like on the ground realistic look. So totally agree with that. It's so I think we're coming to the end. So I've got a couple of last questions. I think as you know, like the sort of mission based message. I'm sort of enthusiastic about that, and from following you and some of the people who have done similar things has prompted us to roll out the thing we're doing from April, where we're giving all the profit away to good causes. And a lot of it is driven by that kind of thing. It's like, it's not we want to make an impact. We want to think, we've asked the question of what are we doing, why are we doing this, and up until now that's been a bit of a gap, and it's just been a bit of an empty hole where I didn't really have the answer. And I think that's one of the things that's happened through through the pandemic, is it's made me look at it and say, what's on a long run. I ironically, as you mentioned, I was out on
not
a run
shower
on the
though,
moor,
not a shower,
and
just
that's
a long run.
not a shower. No, one of the two always. But it's it hit me then, and I was like, oh, I think this is a way that we could do it, and we could switch the model, and so that's very much motivated about going and having impact and doing really good stuff. But I'm very aware of the fact that it gives us more stuff to talk about and great things to talk about with other potential clients and marketing and all that kind of thing. And it's not it's not in a kind of horrible, cynical way. It's just a natural effect of the fact that we've got something like that at our core, rather than just being your run-of-the-mill marketing agency that the owner wants to pocket as much cash as they possibly can. So I think to kind of close out on that side of things, how do you go about choosing where you go next, kind of what causes to support, what drives that?
It's it's a lot of the big reason why I decided to go back to studying and to kind of focusing on it. If we won't go somewhere, we won't set up a new race unless we believe we can have a genuine and powerful social impact. On a deeper level, you've got to question, what does having a social impact mean? Because if we just put on a race that brought loads of money to that community, that would be a social impact, right? That would be that. But that's not. We want to have a deeper level, a discursive piece around the future of that community, that region, that country, whatever it is within the remits of that race. So we started at the very, very beginning. I went full-time in September 2015. That's when the Sustainable Development Goals were announced by the UN, and these goals for the next 15 years, and it just became the most obvious thing in the world. Well, obviously, we ended up being kind of pretty much the first organization to have the global goals at our core, because just by chance we set up at the same time. And so everything was like, okay, cool, we're going to focus on global goals per race. Over time, that didn't quite work. And then again, we've brought it back and said, well, no, that every race needs to have a global goal. We need to focus on that one thing, because otherwise there's always more great organizations that you want to support. And every time I have a meeting with an organization, it's like, I really want to find a way to support these. But if you try and support lots of different things, you end up supporting nobody that well. Our first year in Nepal, we had 9 organizations we were supporting. Now we've got 2. We're writing much better checks. It's worth their time to invest in impact, because we're asking them to come and spend a day or 2 of their time telling their story. That there's a cost to that for the organization. There's a time cost to that. There's an opportunity cost to that. So we need to make that super worthwhile. So honing in and just saying and limiting ourselves is definitely where we want to go. And I remember, you when we talked last, it was about, education was something that was really important to you. And it's like, okay, cool. There are loads of different ways of looking at education, right? But you just need to, for us, it's in each race, right? Each race needs to focus on it and focus only on 1 or 2 organizations, and not try and shoot the lights out and not try and help everybody, because that way you help nobody. And so how we select the organizations is again different in each country. In Jordan, as I said, we went straight to Crown Prince Foundation. We said, this is what we're doing. Who's the best organization for us to work with? Okay, cool. And it ended up with Greening the Desert, which was a incredible setup, which is using permaculture and natural farming techniques in order to, they literally are growing this lush outcrops in places where it's 50 degrees Celsius with limited rainfall, below sea level. And he's like, where's the best place in the world I can possibly find a place to show that permaculture works. Okay, I'll go to the worst place in the world to grow something, and now they've done it. And so we're working with those. And actually, in my first reading, when I started my master's, first reading, Greening the Desert came up as a project in my reading. I was like, holy crap, that's so cool.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're getting better at it for sure. But yeah, there's no, we haven't blueprinted a strategy really on it. And I think that comes up throughout this conversation is the first, we just spend time listening, working out who are the ones leading the biggest issues facing that community, who are the best organizations, who's already working there, who understands the community. Because as I said before, like it's not my place to tell the story, nor is it my place to decide what the community needs. The partners we work with, the charities we work with, they're the ones who are working with the community week in, week out. So we want to work with those organizations that are listening to the community and responding to the community, taking the time to develop strategies for the community, not saying, cool, this worked over there, so we're going to do it here, but developing strategies for with the community. When we find those organizations, we then do it in a way like anything that comes from the fundraising from Impact Marathon, that's unrestricted. You don't have to build a toilet that says this is the Impact Marathon toilet block, right? Because that's not what's helping the community. We're not saying you've got to spend it this way or that way. If you need to spend it on salaries and overheads, that's okay, because most of the grants you go out for are specific and they tell you where they're meant to be spent, and you have to give a project there. We don't do that because I always wanted to be the kind of grant maker that I would want to be working with as a charity. And so the unrestricted funding, I think, is a super, super important thing, so often overlooked in the pursuit of needing to have metrics on impact, is the overlooking the fact that I want them to have really good staff. I want the office to be really well run, because if it's not, they're ineffective and they'll probably won't be around in 4 or 5 years' time. So that toilet block is not going to get looked after in 5 years' time. So we've not really had an impact. So it's very complex, basically, but community-led, community listening to community, serving their needs, and then on my side, unrestricted funding, and we're trying now to get to the point where we can give it unrestricted funding over 3 years. Okay, so you're going to get this amount for 3 years as a minimum. So they can now plan over 3 years and not just, cool, we've got through another year. Right, we need to find our budget again for this year. Small organizations need security. You need to give them, if you own, if we as in our organizations only had 1 year of funding, what does that make you? You're thinking about how to survive that year, not thinking about what we can do in 10 years. And therefore it limits your vision.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great stuff in there. It's a lot of food for thought for me, because, we're obviously very early in that journey, and like you say, it's every step sort of uncovers another 10 things to think about, and you take that into account. But going to one of the things that you say a lot, and Impact say a lot, is the small steps, the small steps kind of premise. And I think that's something I've tried to take on a lot more recently, is rather than trying to get bogged down in the giant thing of what it is, because otherwise you just get outfaced. It's like, let's just do what the next thing is and move it forward slightly, and then things will start to happen, and you adapt to them as that goes on. And
also, if you're only taking small steps, you can take a small step back as well. It's not such a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's less stressful in that respect. It's like, okay, cool, that didn't work.
Yeah,
okay, cool, let's just go this way then. It's fine. If you've taken a big leap and you jumped off a cliff there.
Tough to recover. Are there any other causes or businesses that inspire you, Nick? Anything else that kind of springs to mind?
People that inspire, organizations that I look around and get inspired by. Anyone who's really harnessing the power of sport. I think Laureus is an organization I really admire. They've got their sport awards, but they also kind of do a lot of work in terms of finding the best development, best organizations out there for using sport for development. And when I read their impact reports, I'm always just like, this is, they're really on it. So I'm super impressed with them and their network. I think you find challenge and inspiration, going back to Dave again. I'm blown away by what he's built with Yes Tribe, and just the engagement he has amongst the followings. Sierra Leone Marathon, their fundraising is always off the charts. It's always brilliant the way they can fundraise. So I think you can find inspiration from every different sector. In the ultra running world, Ultra X have just sort of come from nowhere to just be everywhere, and I'm just massively impressed with their marketing as an organization and how they've gone out and just really shaking up the ultra running trail industry, and having the courage to just go out there and state what they're here for. I admire that. Run Talk Run, which is a mental health organization run by a girl called Jess Robson, here in the UK and around the world. Like what Jess has done, like talking to her and just seeing the way that she tells her story so organically, and so like you're in. I set up to talk about mental health. There's going to be some uncomfortable posts in there as well, and that complete openness and vulnerability has always challenged me to be more open on my own social channels. So absolutely everywhere there's some
nice.
There's inspiration for sure.
Yeah, cool. So last question then, what advice would you give to if there's someone who's thinking about starting a travel business of some shape or form, what advice would you give them?
I think we at the moment as an industry, we have to be cognizant of the fact that our travel has to have a bigger purpose than just I want to go there. Because I want to go there is not enough to justify the potential damage the damage that travel has done, right? So there's bigger things at play there. There's technologies that needs to happen in order to make air travel more sustainable, and the fact is that travel is the antidote to racism. It is the antidote to closed-minded thinking. It opens minds. It connects humanity. That there is a power to travel. Let's not lose that in the pursuit of trying to avoid traveling. It's a difficult time for the industry, basically, I think, because we've got the issue of carbon, we've got the issue of sustainability, we've got the issue of I just saw this morning actually that they're going to build a wall around the resorts of Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. What the I'm sorry, what are we doing? What are we doing? What is the point of traveling to Egypt if I'm going to be in a walled community lying on I can do that. I could do that down here in Wales. Yeah, sometimes it's hot enough. I could lie on a beach down here in Pembrokeshire, Wales. But it's like travel, the brilliance of travel is in the connections it makes us in our own heads. It helps us see the world differently. It helps us open up thoughts. It helps us discuss stuff. It helps us get out of our comfort zone. It helps all of these things. So how are we as a travel industry going to make sure that every trip we do is progressing mankind in a way, but also, let's make sure if you're setting up a travel industry right now, you better make sure that you're carbon neutral, because if you're not, we're causing our own death of an industry, really, aren't we? So it's like we've got to be really aware, really engaged in that conversation. Everything from the hotels we pick, what's their waste management systems like? Where are the because there are hotels all over the world that don't give a crap about the community around it. So who are we working with in that respect? And that should transition now away from, okay, cool, we're an eco lodge, to, well, we're a lodge. This is how we work. Obviously, we work with the community. Obviously, we support this. Obviously, we have social entrepreneurs that come in. Why is it that eco travel is a separate thing? That should be travel, right? It should be like that. That shouldn't be something that we, is, I'm spending a bit more because of that. No, it's like we should all be doing that. Like if you're booking your package holiday for £300 for a week in Magaluf, I know Magaloof's got a bad rep on this podcast already, but it's just like, sadly, it is like, if you ask me about my travel hell, it would be probably Magaluf. But
the poster boy,
I've never been there. I'm sure it's lovely, and I'm sure there's normally. Actually, I thought this about Cancun. I went to Cancun accidentally, and I like you get down the coast. It's flipping cool. There's a reason it's popular, right? So I don't want to dump on locations because they're popular, right? That's not the point. The point is that if you're paying rock bottom prices, you're probably doing nothing good for the planet, but you are maybe enjoying a bit of sun. So I just think that we need to think about why every trip needs to have a purpose and a meaning now, and that doesn't. Yeah, I'm not going to go on too much on that one. I think I've said my point.
Yeah.
I could go off on another.
No, absolutely. Listen. It makes sense though, and I agree. It's not. I think the beauty of this kind of thing now is that it's not a sort of again, like a sacrifice yourself for the cause or anything like that. It's like, it's a sensible business decision. Like, if you don't have those things, your business will not do as well. Going back to the marketing side of things, if you have good values at the heart of what you do, then that will make your business more successful. So I think people a lot of the time mistake it for thinking like, oh, I need to do these things because I feel like that's what will be frowned upon, so I'll give up a bit of the business because of that. But it's the polar opposite. I think it's a contributing factor to making your business more successful. So yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think if people think about it that way, it becomes a no-brainer that that's what should be happening. Obviously, for bigger organisations, it's harder to, it's the oil tanker syndrome. It's harder to turn it around and get into what's going on now. But if you are a smaller business and or you're starting fresh, then it should be.
It's a great opportunity, right? It's a great opportunity to do it. And if with the oil tankers, they'll either transition or they won't survive, and that's the nature of it. And we need to be okay with that. Okay, if a business has bad practices that are damaging the environment and not then sadly
it'll go down.
It needs to change, and from that's how we change the industry, because if it carries on in the rate it is, then it's not an industry anymore, and at that moment we lose what is amazing about travel. We lose what is powerful about travel and the life affecting and changes it can make. And I go back to that element of antidote. Right, and it's been on my mind for a couple of weeks whilst on long runs, and I've, this element of, we saw what happened in January at the Capitol in Washington. We saw what's happened, all over the world in terms of the populist political movements. And I think sometimes about, if I grew up in a super middle class Surrey, privately educated, all of these things, and yet have this sort of very, where is it that comes from, that social focus, that point about connecting, and that the fact that borders don't really work in a globalized world, that idea that we, if we're confident in that, where does that come from? Well, when I think about the people in my life who are, a lot of it comes from that amazing experiences of travel. Like, if you follow Leon McCarran, and he's living in Iraq, he used to live in Amman. You learn more about the Middle East following Leon McCarran and his journeys through the Middle East than and it opened than you will watching any CNN or Sky News or whatever, because you're getting this opportunity to see it from the perspective of someone who's really intrigued by the travel and the experiences of travel. And I think that's those kind of things are so important, and that's where travel has a future. It has a future for humanity in connecting us, and it's hugely important in that, but we've got to do it more sustainably.
Yeah, 100% agree. Nick, that seems like as good a point as any to bring it to a close. Thanks so much for coming on. So many great nuggets in there. And it's lovely to chat to you in more depth again, and to hear more about what you're doing, because obviously the stuff you're doing with Impact is fantastic, and it just sounds like, all things considered at the moment, the flywheel's turning, and hopefully big things keep happening for you.
Keep telling us, keep confidence in that process. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Tom,
indeed. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to get you, Nick?
So for me personally, Instagram, NJ Kershaw. That's the quickest and easiest place to find me. Impact Marathon as well on Instagram is easy enough to find as well. So those are the two places. Instagram's where we spend most of our time. So you can find us there.
Quality. And the website is impactmarathon.com.
That's it. If you type it into Google, it's all super easy to find. Yeah, we're not hiding too much.
Okay. Tremendous. Okay, lovely. Thanks so much for being on, Nick.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom.
I'll speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's been so much fun recording the first season of the podcast, and I couldn't have picked a better episode to close it out. I hope you enjoyed it too, and have noted just a few of the many tips Nick shared there, which I've no doubt will help any organisation make progress. Go to impactmarathon.com for more information, where you'll also find links to their various social channels, and you can join the followings that Impact have and the fantastic storytelling that they have around all the work that they're doing. If you go to seotravel.co.uk/Nick-Kershaw, that's KERSHAW, for all the show notes and links to the many fantastic resources that Nick mentioned there. There's some great case studies you can check out that Nick highlighted, and some really good causes that fantastic options to follow and get more information from. You can also watch the full video of the conversation at that link, or visit seotravel.co.uk/podcast for all the other episodes from season 1, where you can get lots of other insight too. If you're a travel company looking for marketing support from people who really care about your success, then please do get in touch at seotravel.co.uk, and we'd love to hear from you. You can also read more about our 100% project there, which outlines how we give all the profit we make from the business to educational charities, both at home and around the world. We'd love your support in spreading the word so we can help get these charities as much support as possible. If you enjoyed the show, it would be fantastic if you could review it on iTunes and share what your favourite bits were. Subscribe to it there, and it would be fantastic if you could share it with at least one other person who you think would benefit from this episode and the insight that Nick offered. I've absolutely loved recording the first season and speaking to so many interesting people. I hope you've enjoyed following along and listening and learning from these great guests that we've had. If you would like to hear more, please email me on tom@seotravel.co.uk with your feedback from the first season. Could be highlights, favourite episodes, key learnings, or even suggestions for future guests that you think we should have on. I'd love to hear from you and get your feedback and your help and advice. If it sounds like there's enough appetite, then we'll keep going, and I'd love to put together a second season. In the words of Alan Partridge, have I got a second series? In the meantime, thanks so much for listening, and until next time, happy travels.